Yeah, so I'm thinking this is a little too close. Yeah, that looks a little better. What's up guys? My name is Sean from White Jade Productions, and today I'm gonna be telling you how to get the most depth of field, what causes depth of field, and the difference between T-stops and f-stops, because one is a light measurement and one is a depth of field measurement. One is scientific and one is kind of yes, but also no. We'll get into it. Hello there. This is my Red Dragon 6K. It has a cool lens on it. This lens has a T-stop of 1.8. Now, T-stops measure how much light gets in. So if I'm trying to calculate how bright my lights need to be, or how much ND to put on my camera, or how much to stop the aperture down, that tells me an exact number, so I'm not over or underexposed. Now, the problem with T-stop lenses is it doesn't tell you how much depth of field you're getting. For example, if they decided to put an ND coating on the lens, it could open as wide as T16, but still have the depth of field of f1.8. I know it's a little confusing. T-stops are measured via how much light comes in versus how much comes out the other side if you shine a light through it, plain and simple. So an f-stop number on a lens like this Blazar Remus 33, which is T18, would probably be closer to f1.7 or f1.6. Okay, now that we covered f-stops and T-stops very briefly, if you have questions, put them in the comments below. While you're down there, like and subscribe. Thank you. It is also important to think about the sensor itself. That Red Dragon that I just threw on my tripod over here, it is a 1.17 crop from a full frame sensor, meaning it crops in 1.17 times. The traditional APS-C or 3-perf Super 35 sensor, it gets very complicated. Another video for another day about crop sizes, but your standard digital APS-C crop will be 1.5 or 1.6, thus reducing your focal range by that amount, or multiplying it if we're going that way, I suppose. But it does reduce the depth of field you get by 1.5 or 1.6, or whatever multiplication that is. Again, Red Dragon has a 1.17 focal multiplication on it, and therefore it has a depth of field reduction on it of also 1.17. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but hang with me here. I promise we're going somewhere. Now, cameras that have a sensor that is larger than full frame, VistaVision sensors, medium format, and even extended formats like 65 and 70 millimeter are examples of larger format than full frame sensors. Also, those have a focal multiplier or focal reducer when compared to full frame because they're larger, but it also enhances your depth of field by the same way. Just think of it as opposite crop sensor. If you have a Super 35 camera and you want more depth of field, well, you can simply go to full frame. You can put the same lenses on. If they have full frame coverage, then you will get 1.5 more times depth of field. So for example, let's say you had an f2 lens. I'm actually gonna grab a lens real quick so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This right here is my Blazar Remus 65, and we're just gonna open it to 2.8. Well, one full stop would be between 2.8 and 4. I don't really know if you can see that well, but there we go, 2.8 and 4. Now, if you are gonna multiply your depth of field from going crop sensor to full frame, that is gonna take you between 2.8 and 4. It's gonna put you right in the middle. And it's gonna do that for every single one of your stops. Between 4 and 5.6, it's gonna put you right in the middle. Now, if you're coming from a micro 4/3 system, which is a 2 times crop, you will be doubling that. So you'll be going from 2.8 all the way to 4. Or I really should say 4 all the way to 2.8. So if you've been looking at buying new lenses or buying a new camera, maybe not what you need is a faster lens, but a larger sensor camera. However, faster lenses do allow more light in, so consider that as well. Now, of course, you can combine these things. You can add faster lenses and larger sensors. Doing this gives you more depth of field. So just like when I go from a 2.8 to a 4, that gives me twice as much, or from a 4 to a 2.8, that gives me twice as much depth of field. Going from a micro 4/3 to full frame sensor also gives me twice as much depth of field. And if I do both at the same time, I can get 4 times as much depth of field than I would with an f4 lens on a micro 4/3 sensor. So if you're looking to up your depth of field, there are ways you can do it, but there's one more way to increase the depth of field, and it's a kind of lens. I know, I just brought it up, but it's anamorphic lenses. These lenses right here, they're pretty cool. Now, each anamorphic lens has a different kind of multiplication factor. I have a Sirui anamorphic adapter, and that's 1.25. And that would give me 1.25 more depth of field. That's what that would do. Now there's some cropping things. If you're gonna be doing scope and you're on 17:9 sensor, you can get 50% more image and kind of 50% more depth of field depending on how you frame things up, but that's another video for another day. I have videos on that. If you wanna go watch it, check out my channel. Again, like and subscribe. Be kind, guys, it's great. Anamorphic lenses still do something very interesting. 2x anamorphic lenses, I'm just gonna keep on this track of 2x since we've been talking about it, will add 2 times more depth of field to your image, assuming you don't have to crop. Now, I'm gonna go back over to my Red Dragon right here. I have it, let me hold this lens. Red Dragon, again, cinema cameras, they do something really cool. You can actually shoot in a 6:5 aspect ratio on this cinema camera. That means a 2x anamorphic lens will give you a 2:4:0 aspect ratio straight out of the box, so you won't have to crop anything at all. Thus, whatever lens you would be using on this camera will now have 2 times the depth of field vertically. Now, I do say vertically because anamorphic lenses, let's see if you can see it. Yeah, there you go. Let me rotate that right. You can see that they have these streaks vertical that will create your horizontal flares. But as you can see, I'll open the back cap, it also squeezes the image. So we're gonna get that little squeeze, that little oval, the oval bokeh you see. Here's some footage so you can see what anamorphic looks like if you haven't seen it or paid attention to it all too much. But these are 1.5x anamorphic lenses, meaning you'll get 1.5 times more bokeh vertically, because it only squeezes the image vertically. So you're gonna get more depth of field vertically. But that still creates background separation, and it allows you to do something really interesting. When you shoot anamorphic, you can actually shoot at slower stops and get the same amount of bokeh. It's really cool. Stay with me here. Imagine this is a 2x anamorphic lens, which is typical of Hollywood to use. If we were to shoot spherical at 2.8, that would be the equivalent of shooting anamorphic at 4. So if we want a cleaner image on anamorphic and we don't want all the crazy stuff going on, we can actually just stop down our anamorphic lens to a 4. Now, again, like we were talking about earlier with crop sensors and going to full frame, that's a 1.5x crop. These are 1.5x lenses. Same deal applies. Spherical at 2.8 is anamorphic at a 2.8:4 split. I know, it's again, a little bit confusing. Hang with me here. When you apply all of these things together, if you have a micro 4/3 setup, say Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K with a spherical lens, if you decide to upgrade to, let's say the Blackmagic Pixis, let's keep it in the same line, and you get a 2x anamorphic lens, let's say you've been shooting on f4 on your Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, and you upgrade to a lens that's, let's say, anamorphic at 1.8, a full stop of difference. What you will end up getting is 2 times the amount of depth of field from just changing the sensor, plus another 2 times from just going to a different lens, and then another 2 times if that lens is anamorphic. If not anamorphic, 1.5, bringing us to a total of 6 times more the depth of field. So when you hear a lot of people on the internet talk about, oh, micro 4/3 or crop sensor is just as good, yes, but you're limiting yourself by a certain factor, whether that's 1.5, 1.6, or 2x, that crop sensor will limit the amount of depth of field you get, not the amount of light you get, and there are advantages to shooting crop, but it does limit your depth of field. In other words, depending on your setup and how you decide to shoot, you can increase your depth of field by up to 6 times, and that's low-key just a crazy number. Of course, having the shallowest depth of field isn't always the best thing. I find myself stopping my lens all the way down to T8 sometimes. And I know people would think T8 is too much. Sometimes I do T11 just to freak you guys out. Why? Because I want deep focus. Sometimes I want to see the background. It's always good advice to think about what you're shooting, why you're shooting, and what you want to see. Some people like to think that A lot of depth of field, a lot of background separation just means you have an ugly background and you don't want to show it. And sometimes that's definitely true. But if you have a pretty background, why hide it? If you've done all the work of set designing and lighting and creating a story in the background, why would you shoot with the largest sensor? Why would you shoot with the fastest lens? Why would you get as much depth of field as possible when in reality, sometimes you need to show everything? Anywho, this has been my little TED Talk about depth of field, I suppose. I like depth of field, it's kind of cool. I like the bokeh. If you like the bokeh too, like and subscribe again for the third time this video, because I don't ask you guys to do it enough, because like 90% of you guys who watch my videos on a regular basis aren't subscribed. So if you do that, it'd be chill. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I think that's all I have for this video. There's another video right down there, I think. You can subscribe right there. Go watch another video, support my channel. It helps me keep making videos like this. If you're still here and not subscribed, what are you doing?